Well, luckily, Relax Radio has got you covered. Join me, George Shaft, every Wednesday from 4 till 6 on the Wednesday Witterer, only on Relax Radio. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Wednesday Witterer. My name is George Shaft, and you are going to be joined today by a deep dive that will be the whole show. 2 hours of me discussing in the greatest, deepest, darkest lengths about insults, swear words, and all sorts of profanity throughout history, biology, sociology, and, just how it generally affects us. I'll catch you all again very, very soon. And in the meantime, you are listening to Relax Radio 2, the Wednesday Witcher of George Shaft, and I'll catch you again soon.
Online, on the iOS and Android, on your mobile phones. Great speak.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Wednesday Witcher with George Shaft. My name is George Shaft. I mean, it should have been kind of clear. It was in the name. And I am really, really excited to do this show today. Today's going to be a bit of a different one than it's been before. I'm trying out with a new sort of, kind of a new style when it comes to the Wednesday Witcher, a new idea of how to go and do things. You see, I've been told off now for days and days, weeks, ages, for all of time, that, the two kind of main things I am interested in should really be, if you will, split off. It's true that I'm very, very interested in two things. One is, facts, information, learning, general knowledge, which is more on that very, very soon as I get into the deep dive today, all about swear words, all about insults, and how they affect us. But the second part I need to mention is, of course, the fact that I am probably infamously very, very enthusiastic, and although I don't think enthusiastic is the right word, though, is it? It's kind of more just like morbidly fascinated, more like staring at a car crash that's just about to happen, powerless to stop it, but with the impending dread that maybe I should do something about it. Anyway, I am like that when it comes to politics. So I've kind of had the thought that, I should probably split this up. I should probably split up now these ideas and go in separate ways of that. Now, this extended also, though, to the general knowledge thing. And, but before on the Wednesday Witcher, I had this thing where I'd tease people with, the deep dive. But then I'd spend, the first couple of minutes and at the beginning and at the end talking about, some other unrelated thing that kind of catches my attention. I'm somebody who spent a lot of time just hoovering up information and finding out all sorts of things, just learning, discovering about the world and being fascinated by it. And so, of course, when I see, something that catches my attention, I want to share it and want to go oh yeah, no, here's some cool thing I researched. But not to worry about that anymore. Today's episode is going to be different. Today's episode is going to just be one subject. I'm really stoked about this. Really, it's intense actually, but swear words, profanity, insults. What's all that about? Well, I'm glad you asked, or maybe you didn't. Maybe you're just I know what swear words are. Words I can't say. And you see, that's where my interest started. You see, I've been fascinated for a while by the fact that what you can and can't do in media. The rules will vary from country to country, and when it comes to that, I'm going to focus on British law because it's the country in which I currently live in, and so have an inherent interest in figuring out, oh, what's the situation like where I am? But undoubtedly true that just about everywhere there is some form of limit, either legal or social, on what you can say. Just that's just a fact. That's just something that's true, a natural part of living in society. Some of those include some of the things that are taboo, some of the things that you can't say are just mere individual words, just mere words, 4 letters long. Definition, almost you could say, is fairly bland actually. But yet I can't say these words. Words like, no, you're not going to fool me like that. But I'm sure that your head filled in what they were. You probably thought of words that began with the letter F, or words that began with the letter C, or the letter M, or the letter A. Words that I am forbidden from saying because why? Why is it so taboo? Why is it so difficult to bring yourself to say it on a public platform, out in the street, out in life? Dreadfully easy to say them, actually. But let's just have a quick sort of skip and a hop and just go straight into the deep dive. Now, just kidding. I do have one little thing I need to say before I actually go into the deep dive. Just a little sort of, if you will, word of warning, word of advice before I do so. And that is, of course, the fact that you might have heard at the beginning of this show, for the first 20 seconds or so, a jingle. You might have heard some just like words that came out of, from what you can tell, probably nowhere. Well, that's because I'm currently of a mission, a bit of a crusade, to overhaul the ads. I recorded a bunch of ads last Sunday, which was also, by coincidence, my birthday. So happy birthday to me. I am now 35 and really thinking about life as a whole because of it. But part of that involved doing a couple trailers for the Wednesday Witterer. So you'll be hearing like my draft ideas, my kind of rough diamonds, if you will, that have been coming out, and just putting them out there to see what you think. Do you think they're good? Do you like them? I always make sure to read the comment sections for the Wednesday Witterer, of course, broadcasting and being live streamed on Facebook, on YouTube, I believe on Instagram, on Twitter, all over the place. You know what to do. Give me a little hello, a wave, say something. I like it. If you want to say something to me directly, you can do so too. The phone number with which you can do so is 07852 473 and 473. But if you do, please, for the love of all mercy, do not use an insult. Do not use a swear word. But what is a swear word? Well, I'm going to skip over to the dictionary, the free internet dictionary I've decided for, to go with the first of these words. An insult, it's defined, is a verb, is, quote, to treat or speak, to insolently or with contemptuous rudeness, or an affront. The second it's got is to affect as an affront, offend or demean. Okay. Meanwhile, as a noun, the word insult means an insolent or contemptuously rude action or remark. Again, an affront. It is also known as the second one's got is something having the effect of an affront. Meanwhile, there's also a medical sort of definition for it, but it doesn't look very relevant. Let's go, though, and open up this little juicy, I want to mix metaphors here, say juicy chestnut, even though I know chestnuts are not juicy at all, and go to fortco. So just like fortco.com. It's like, why would you put in like the co there as well? It's like, nah, anyway. their article from a few months ago, with the title of, quote, "What are swear words and what are they used for?" Not that interested in all of it, just for the first paragraph, which reads, and I quote, "A swear word is a word or phrase that's generally considered blasphemous, obscene, vulgar, or otherwise offensive. These are also known as bad words, obscenities, expletives, dirty words, profanities, and four-letter words. The act of using them of swear is also known as swearing or cursing." Notice a little trend that's been popping up. Haven't you noticed? There's so many different words used just to describe the concept. Don't worry, that is something that will be a recurring theme throughout today's deep dive as I go into insane, obsessive detail into everything you could ever want to know about swear words. But first, I'm going to spare you a bit from the swear words. No, really, I am. I'm going to direct you towards these upstanding, incredibly polite, honest, noble, beautiful people who just, say all kinds of these other things that are not the show. I'll catch you all again very, very soon after these other people.
Whoa, Relax Radio.
আপনি হয়তোবা জানেন না যে রেডিও অ্যাডভার্টাইজমেন্ট ইজ 4 times more powerful than any other media. রিল্যাক্স রেডিওতে যদি অ্যাডভার্টাইজ করতে চান তাহলে আমাদেরকে আজই যোগাযোগ করুন on 020-7474-9292. আমাদের সাথে অ্যাডভার্টাইজ করুন from £99 a month. Increase your business by advertising on Relax Radio.
It's time for a show on Relax Radio. It talks about me and you. It's time for a show on Relax Radio. It talks about me and you. So listen to us, 24 hours, and let the happiness come to you on Relax Radio. Tune in to Relax Radio.
It has been too long. No one has taken the initiative to know who you are and what you do. Well, Relax proudly presents Relax Media to unite and expose all media-related personalities under one umbrella. If you are an artist or maybe you're looking for one, look no further. Log on to www.relaxmedia.com, RELAKS media.com. In return, you get a free webpage and exposure to wider fan appreciation and contacts. Also, optional personal manager. Don't delay.
Relax Radio.
Witter, jibber, jabber. Oh, don't mind me. I'm just wittering away as I usually do on the Wednesday Witterer every Wednesday between 4 and 6 p.m. Join me if you're into that sort of thing for whatever reason, then you've come to the right place as you're listening right now to the Wednesday Witterer with George Shaft, hosted by George Shaft. And, well, I'm not going to keep you waiting anymore. Oh, let's bring you on back to the show. See you around. Hello and welcome to the Wednesday Witterer with George Shaft. My name is George Shaft, and joining me in the studio today is the realization that the music is playing on the wrong track. Yeah, you see that? Look at this amazing world. All kinds of amazing, wonderful, fantastic things happen in the world where there's music. But the music's not going to be staying on for very long because I'm going to insult it. Music, you are a... Nah, I'm not unfortunately going to be very allowed to use these insults, even though that's the subject of my show today. What have we learned already? I've already spent a few minutes, discussing over some of the basics of it. We've learned that an insult is something that causes offense. It's something, that's an affront. We've learned that swear words do the same thing. And we've also learned that swear words have got loads and loads and loads of different alternate ways of saying it, including 4-letter words and bad words. But let's go and take a step back. No, I'm not going to mean just like, take a physical step back. But let's go look in history. Let's, in fact, go and let's start the history tour with a bit of a scenario. Imagine you're wandering around the street, you're having a good time, and then somebody out in the street points at you and says, you fop doodle. That's pretty serious. Is that what you're going to be thinking? Probably not, to be honest. You're probably just going to be very confused and go like, what does that mean? What kind of person would say such a thing? Well, the kind of person who'd say such a thing would probably be someone living in medieval times, according to historyhustle.com, but I did confirm that exact same word was in multiple different lists of sort of medieval, Middle Ages insults. In fact, the practice of sort of using insults is much older than the medieval times and all of their hilarious lists, actually. I quite like the sort of medieval lists. Hedgeborn is one I quite liked. There's something about that. It's like, you hedgeborn. It's like, what? Like, as in, like, the hedges are now birthing people? I just imagine, like, someone walking, down, like, some idyllic country lane, in Yorkshire or somewhere like that. And suddenly, like, a person crawls out of a hedge, like, newly born, bright into the world. But it wouldn't have been funny to somebody at the time. It would not have been funny in someone in medieval times to be called as such. And what would have also been maybe less funny would have been, of course, the fact that the idea of insults is much, much, and I mean much, older. I opened up Psychology Today. We'll be skipping across to go and look for that. But in the meantime, Psychology Today mentioned, of course, the fact that, there we are, the fact that chickens famously practice hierarchy. Chickens, of course, are not the only animals to have the concept and go follow through the idea of the hierarchy, but they do enforce theirs by pecking each other. The chicken that gets pecked by everyone is the one at the bottom of the pile, while the chicken that is not pecked by anyone is they're the leader, they're like the top chicken in the group. But there's problems with pecking, isn't there? Kind of hurts, kind of violent. People might react to something like that. Luckily, humans evolved this thing called talking and being verbal, and we realized that we could, in many ways, do the same thing. Not with our actions, though, but with our words. In many ways, according to Psychology Today, this is exactly what swear words really are. And in many ways, it's no surprise then that they are so ancient. So ancient, in fact, that the first insult, the first swear word, probably wasn't even a word at all. Now, if you're looking at like the live stream, you'll see my hand. Now, if I was somebody who's a bit braver than, more rude than I actually am, you probably can guess which finger I would have raised up to show to the camera. Now, the example of what is in many ways one of the oldest insults. The middle finger has been documented as something causing offense, something that was used as a rude gesture as far back as ancient Greece. In the 10th century, the use of the middle finger was described in one source. I'm not going to skip over to it. It's going to take too long. Now, it was described as like, oh yeah, it's like this thing that people do that, is kind of insulting and causes great offense. The 10th century. Some of the oldest photographs, in fact, featured the gesture, including one photo I quite liked from 1886. That was two baseball teams in the United States, and one of the players was like, "God, I don't like that other team who I'm forced to stand and be all nice to, in the photograph." Yeah, so he just flicks out his middle finger, not the camera. Preserved forever. With it, of course, I should also add a great mustache. So I do recommend looking at that photograph if you are hardened and secure enough to not feel insulted by a man who lived hundreds of years ago. Of course, the idea of an insult, as we might have already, you might have already clued in, you might have already realized, is absolutely not new at all. We see, mentions of insults or even just like specific swear words written down themselves over and over and over again in ancient literature, in the histories of ancient peoples. The concept makes sense. Remember when I was talking about chickens? Remember when I was talking about like the hierarchy, the idea? Well, in many ways, that's kind of the purpose of an insult. That's kind of the reason why they started. It's this idea of, if you will, aggression, of asserting yourself. It's like, oh yeah, look at me, I'm the best, I'm the best caveman in the jungle. You should follow me, that sort of thing. But, a little secret that like not many people really talk about, but fights to the death, especially amongst members of the same species, are exceedingly rare. Animals and basically every living creature finds a way to, confront members of their same species or other species, but without actually, attacking them. Unless we're talking about predators. Predators are a bit different, but because it's, food for them. But, just look at anything. Deer is a great one. They butt antlers together, in their sort of fights in the spring. Yeah, but it's all a show. It's all a display. It's all a way of conveying, I'm thinking of like the bison in North America. They have huge thing, hulking tanks of animals, bashing their heads together. Well, they've got very thick skulls though. And, for them, it's a kind of a, oh yeah, look at me. Look how aggressive I could be if I really wanted to be. Whereas the other one's like, oh yeah, well, look at how aggressive I would be if I wanted to actually fight you. Animals, and of course humans, love to find ways in which to assert themselves, in which to sort of put forward that we're the top dog, we're the ones in charge, we're the best ones, without actually resorting to physical violence. This is very, very helpful because, pro fact, 100% of creatures that are alive are better at reproducing than 100% of creatures that are dead. But, which is, of course, something that you risk in an actual physical confrontation. So, we've learned the fact that swear words and insults are incredibly ancient. We've learned the fact that the reason why they're so ancient is because in many ways, even creatures older than humans themselves find ways to, show their dominance and show that they're the best ones without fighting. And this is something that is definitely a true thing for humans as well. We don't want to actually fight to show our dominance, our assertion over others, because, they might lash out. They might hurt us in the process. And, we don't want to, we don't want to be like a coward. More on that word later, by the way. So stay tuned. But you've got to want to, assert yourself and go like, hey, no, I am the one. I am the one in charge. I am the one at the top of the hierarchy, whereas you are the one who is below. But what do you think? Do you think that the hierarchy is really being reinforced by insults? Maybe you have a different perspective. After all, I did see plenty of different perspectives that I would talk about, but I really want to move on to like other things. And so, of course, if you want me to sort of linger on it more and the alternative ideas, it's on you now. Ball's in your court. Luckily, I can give you the keys. The number is 07852 473 473. I will repeat just in case you're, a so and so. Some kind of insult I'm just going to throw out at you. You're going to like pretend to be really offended. Number is 07852 473 and 473. I do want to, however, linger on one last thing when it comes to like the history of insults, the way in which they've been used in the past is, of course, the fact that, well, insults have the social function of, getting, showing that there's a hierarchy and, showing the fact like, yeah, no, I'm the best one. But I do want to mention the fact that, history has regularly backfired and actually has resulted in the very violence that, if you will, insults were evolved to avoid. I think, in particular, for example, I've been really interested recently in Julius Caesar's Gallic campaign. 10 years Julius Caesar basically rampaging through modern day France and Belgium and Britain, basically beating up everybody that ever tried to sort of resist or say, hey, maybe there shouldn't be Romans running around here. Well, multiple times in those Gallic campaigns, though, violence and warfare and people dying came about as a result of swearing. Sometimes there's a bunch of times when there'd be like a Gallic chieftain who'd be like, oh, those Romans, they're all, insult, insult, insult. And the Romans were kind of like, oh, how dare you? How dare you say such a thing? And the kind of Gaul would be like, yeah, no, I do mean it. More insults. It's like, all right, well, and the Roman kind of response would be kind of like, oh, well, oh no, here I go killing again. But of course, on the whole, and especially on the interpersonal level, that is, however, still the sort of the biological, if you will, function, the original origin of insults. But of course, like many things, insults and swear words and profanity is something that isn't so, adapted when you get a third party and when you start to organize. But we have more on that coming on later on the deep dive of the Wednesday Witterer. Stay tuned for. I've got the hiccups now. This is embarrassing. Anyway, stay tuned if you want to sort of listen in and find out more about insults, about swear words. But first, some other people. That's right, these other people will be very, very fond of talking to you. They probably will not use a swear word. They will probably not use an insult. They are very well trained to be sure to never use such kind of horrific language on the air. But hey, who knows? You never know 100%, right? I'll catch you all again very, very soon. You are listening to the Wednesday Witterer on Relaks Radio. My name is George Shaft, and yeah, see you soon.
Whoa, Relax Radio.
আপনি হয়তোবা জানেন না যে রেডিও অ্যাডভার্টাইজমেন্ট ইজ 4 times more powerful than any other media. রিল্যাক্স রেডিওতে যদি অ্যাডভার্টাইজ করতে চান তাহলে আমাদেরকে আজই যোগাযোগ করুন on 020-7474-9292 আমাদের সাথে অ্যাডভার্টাইজ করুন from £99 a month. Increase your business by advertising on Relax Radio.
It's time for a show on Relax Radio. It talks about me and you. It's time for a show on Relax Radio. It talks about me and you. So listen to us, 24 hours, and let the happiness come to you on Relax Radio. Tune in to Relax Radio.
It has been too long. No one has taken the initiative to know who you are and what you do. Well, Relax proudly presents Relax Media to unite and expose all media-related personalities under one umbrella. If you are an artist or maybe you're looking for one, look no further. Log on to www.relaxmedia.com, RELAKS media.com. In return, you get a free webpage and exposure to wider fan appreciation and contacts. Also, optional personal manager. Don't delay.
Relax Radio.
Hello and welcome back to the Wednesday Witterer with George Shaft. My name is George Shaft, and something disastrous has just happened. I'm looking at. It looks like the entire Mevo's just crashed, which is not the usual. I will have to admit, by any stretch of the imagination. I am just going to pull this out, and hope that this is going to fix itself pretty soon. I would lob it an insult, but unfortunately, well, yeah, I can't do that because rules exist. We live in a society. There's been problems. There we go. We now have the thing up back again, though I think that we probably do have there's a few little issues now ongoing and running, but that's just behind the scenes. I would start to insult it, but insults are in fact just the subject of today's show. So why would I be doing that? So we've already learned a couple of things listening today on the Wednesday Witterer with George Shaft, hosted by me, George Shaft. We've learned that swearing and insults are a very, very old concept. We've learned that they are, in many ways, even pre-humans, as a way to sort of establish a hierarchy, as a way to establish, I'm the one in charge. I am the greatest and the most fantastic and the most amazing creature in the pecking order, in the hierarchy. So, you do yourself. No, I'm sure you can fill in the blanks for yourself. We've learned that they have been a constant throughout history, with the use of the middle finger being an insult that stretches as far back as the ancient Greeks. And we've learned that there were a whole beautiful flurry and creativity of insults, even at least as far back as the medieval times, where I quoted a handful of some of the more delightful ancient insults from that era. We also learned the fact that there's some kind of power in them, right? That they're all about, that they seem to have the power enough to make it that they're about the one thing that I can't explicitly say, except for, of course, advocacy for, horrendous actions. So, what you might be thinking, like, okay, so where is the power in that? What is the kind of benefit then? Because if insults, you might be saying, are so ubiquitous, they're so old and so powerful, then what is the use? Why would we say them? What is their purpose? What is their function? Well, I've mentioned their function already. I've mentioned the fact that they do have this kind of power to, at least in the mind of the people saying it, establishing a pecking order, establishing a hierarchy. But is that everything to the story? I've got Psychology Today up on this, who provided me already with the introduction on the thing with the chickens. But, well, it does continue on in a very, very interesting tangent on this one. In a verbal society, says Psychology Today, such as the human one, physical aggression is much less often used to settle issues of status. These are normally mostly deferred to verbal interactions. An insult can thus be interpreted as an attempt to reduce the social status of the recipient and to raise the relative status of the insulter. If that logic is correct, then we can assume that insults are often motivated by anger surrounding issues of status insecurity. Many insults are reactive. They're responses to real or imagined slights from others, such as a person accidentally cutting in front of someone else in a line. And this is definitely true. Both of life, but then also true of what that implies. We know that people are most likely to use, an insult on someone else to someone who sort of just slighted them in just some small, minor way, really. Often in kind of small, minor ways. It's the perfect one is the queue. You're in the queue, you're waiting to buy your bread at the supermarket or something if you're like me, and suddenly someone is just jumping in the way. But think about it from the biological standpoint. Think of it as like, back in the times of monkey. This is now, a creature, another person who is taking precedence in the hierarchy. This is someone who's taking precedence on the social status ladder. Oh dear, that's a threat, actually. If something else is higher in the hierarchy, then they might get all the good things like food, and will be thus relatively left to suffer, which is not very nice at all. I hope you can agree. So now we've got the question then of, in many ways, what is the status, if you will, of swearing in the modern world? Since we already have this history now, as I've talked about before, the history of insults, we've learned that even creatures that aren't humans, use the idea of, kind of pecking, of like showing that, like, yeah, I'm the best, versus other members of the same species. We've learned that the middle finger is an insult as old almost as writing itself, or well, as if you count the ancient Greeks anyway, and very definitively was defined and described as a profane gesture as far back as, for certain, the 10th century. We've learned that some individual words have been have been used as insults in the far past, though the individual words I quoted are no longer used as such as insults, which is, in my opinion, there's a slight tinge of sadness there because, they're funny. But of course, they are not the only insults. Oh, no, no, no. In today's world, in fact, there's a huge, huge flurry and just absolute dominance of insults out in the world and their effect on our modern life, on how we perceive things. But first, I am going to sort of, I'm in a bit two minds at the moment, so I'm just going to do a quick little thing because there we go. So I'm just writing down my thing because I had the questions like, oh, should I just talk about today's impact now, or should I go for biology? And I think no. In today's world, because nowadays there really is a fascinating relationship with insults and swears. And there are many, many places where we could start. But I think that the best one probably to start would be a little known thing called Ofcom. Now, for those of you who are not, working in media, you might never have heard of Ofcom. But Ofcom's really important when you're actually in radio, when you're in the radio station, when you are, doing media, because it's the name of the regulator for the, for broadcast media in the UK. And Ofcom actually produces a list. It produces, if you will, almost like the holy grail of the swear words that cannot be used on television. And on my computer, seated right next to me, is in glorious big detail the full list of the 47 words you cannot say on television and radio. And they are in order. You think I'm crazy? Of course I'm not going to go and actually say them. But, it would have been funny if I'd started to. Plus, even though there are these 47 words that, cannot be said on television and radio, well, I don't know how to say this, but I lied. You actually can say some of these on television, but it really depends on the context, and it depends also on the time. And this is interesting because, well, by all accounts, I have already insulted you, the listener. I did call you, you, the listener, in a roundabout way, a hedgeborn after all. But that's an old insult. That's from medieval times. And so the context has changed. And nowhere does this so clearly get shown how context specific insults and swear words actually are. That it just kind of goes, yeah, it's cool. Take, for example, the word cow. The word cow actually is one of the 47 words on Ofcom's list. No, it's the holy grail list of the banned words that you're not allowed to ever say on TV. But of course, you might be raising your eyebrow and going, wait, but television and radio talk about cows all the time. I mean, how often have we listened to, the news and it talks about, oh, here's some. It's like I used to live in a rural area, so maybe I'm a bit kind of more exposed to it. But like, oh look, there's a cow market. Or you've watched a documentary. It's like, oh look at history of civilizations and how they use cows to conquer the world, that sort of thing. But yet it's on the list. Well, if you're British, it's probably really, really clear why that word is on there. If I was referring, say, to an individual person as such a thing, well, things become a bit different, aren't they? There's implications, there's thoughts, there's there's questions about what that kind of means. And that's something I'm really interested in this whole discussion about, like, what are the attributes that we consider to be insulting. But don't worry, I will get to that later. Because, if our language only had 47 insults in it, I mean, that'd be quite something. But, well, that's not the case. For a start, not even Ofcom really believes that. In just as recently as either 2016 or 2019, I saw two different things on this, probably two different studies. Ofcom actually trialed out, like, if you will, almost like surveys and studies to go like, oh, by the way, do you think this word is an insult? No, dear person who might be watching television or listening to radio. And some of the words that didn't make the list fascinate me for why they didn't. Of all of them, I think probably the word that's become that's most kind of focused my attention has actually been the word Nazi. Now, of course, for anyone listening, it's probably immediately obvious why the word Nazi is clearly an insult. It's like, if you were walking around and somebody called you that, it's like, you wouldn't take that lying down. That'd be really, really rude. But on the other hand, of course, I myself, if you're a loyal listener on the Wednesday Witterer or earlier on the George's Breakfast Buffet, you will have listened to some fabulous, wonderful pieces of radio where I talk about the Second World War and talk about the Nazis in history and some of their actions. One of my favorite segments, now looking back on the George's Breakfast Buffet, was in fact a segment where I talked about a Nazi, basically conspiracy, if you will, or rewriting of history that occurred after the Second World War, where basically a bunch of Nazi sort of generals and writers and people were kind of like, oh yeah, no, don't worry, Britain and America, the war on the Eastern Front was actually like totally us being the complete Übermenschen against endless hordes of all those Russians. Like you don't believe like how many there were, which was, while it was completely untrue. Meanwhile, the question still remains on the topic of insults. Ofcom looked at the word and went, all right, do we want that word to be an insult? So they did a big study with loads of words and found that the word Nazi in their sort of estimation in their surveys was not enough to merit being added to the Holy Grail list of the most evil insults you could give that you could not give, rather, on the television and the radio. This is actually something that reflects a larger trend. It's something that a bunch of the sources, like Psychology Today, actually the main thrust of the Psychology Today article, in fact, is about how, what it means, the fact that people in the modern day today are getting more and more relaxed, more and more chill with swear words, with insults. And I think nowhere has this become so obvious in my mind as with insults around the physical characteristic of, not being very brave. I've noticed that, I've noticed over the past couple of years that words like coward and scaredy cat and wimp have really kind of been disappearing from the everyday usage as insults. Maybe that's just me. If that is so, you are very, very welcome to call the studio. The number is 07852 473 473. And this is a subject that, I'm teasing here, saying it's something I'm interested in, but of course, I will not be. Well, not right now, anyway. I've got, meanwhile, this thing called like other people. These other people, I assure you, do not use insults. They are very, very polite. They are well trained. They are nice people. But let's have a listen to what they have to say. I'll catch you all again very, very soon.
Whoa, relax, radio.
আপনি হয়তোবা জানেন না যে রেডিও অ্যাডভার্টাইজমেন্ট ইজ 4 times more powerful than any other media. রিল্যাক্স রেডিওতে যদি অ্যাডভার্টাইজ করতে চান তাহলে আমাদেরকে আজই যোগাযোগ করুন on 020-7474-9292 আমাদের সাথে অ্যাডভার্টাইজ করুন from £99 a month. Increase your business by advertising on Relax Radio.
It's time for a show on Relax Radio. It talks about me and you. It's time for a show on Relax Radio. It talks about me and you. So listen to us, 24 hours, and let the happiness come to you on Relax Radio. Tune in to Relax Radio.
It has been too long. No one has taken the initiative to know who you are and what you do. Well, Relax proudly presents Relax Media to unite and expose all media-related personalities under one umbrella. If you are an artist or maybe you're looking for one, look no further. Log on to www.relaxmedia.com, RELAKS media.com. In return, you get a free webpage and exposure to wider fan appreciation and contacts. Also, optional personal manager. Don't delay.
Relax Radio.
Do you want to know about the world? Do you want to learn? Do you want to learn about chemistry, physics, engineering, history, politics, just about anything possible? Well, luckily, Relax Radio has got you covered. Join me, George Shaft, every Wednesday from 4 till 6 on the Wednesday Witterer, only on Relax Radio. Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Wednesday Witterer of George Shaft. Joining me in the studio today is the one and only George Shaft, i.e., myself, me, and I all together. Fun fact, little known fact. As I sit here and I deliver insult and after insult, swearing all day and all night in the subject of insults and what they're about, what are they, and what can we learn from them. I have over the past almost an hour now been talking about. Oh, excuse me, I've got a bit of the hiccups. It's kind of annoying. Anyway, been talking about swearing and insults. We've learned that it's a very, very old practice. Possibly even older than humans themselves, and with even animals taking part in things that can be interpreted as insults. We've learned that some gestures, like the middle finger, is in fact older than the ancient is at least as old as the ancient Greeks. Sorry, like the hiccup. The hiccups really kind of messed my train of thought, I have to admit. Anyway, we've learned that the ancient Greeks were using the middle finger as an insult, as a way of swearing. We learned some medieval swear words because the idea of obsolete sort of swear words is something that's interesting and will be relevant later. In particular, the part that was relevant later is the fact that the use of swear words is context dependent in many ways. we learned that Ofcom has a sacred, holy grail list of 47 words that you can't use, but yet some of them were in fact just words that you can't use in the swearing context, because well, you can use the word cow, almost any time, except of course when you're using it to insult an actual person. We also even learned the sort of biological and social function that swear words have had in sort of like, if you will, ancient society, or society of, well, not even ancient society. We're looking more like at monkeys. That it's basically to establish a hierarchy, a pecking order, and that in many ways the use of the insult is something that's says something more about the person using the word than it does about the actual individual who is getting the treatment. But first, I want to sort of talk about the biological effects of being insulted, because, well, being insulted is not very pleasant. I'm sure you've probably got memories of this. There is some of my oldest memories involve insults. I remember when I was like 6. Was it 6? First grade? I think it was about that age. Someone insulting me by way of alluding things that were not very nice about my family. I got very angry. This is, in fact, a pretty common way of reacting to getting insulted, but it does say something quite a bit about humans in general. Well, precisely how we do react, in fact, to these most forbidden and dangerous and powerful of words. Psychology Today has a good starting off point on this. It had an article a few years ago that was, quote, its title is, "What's the best way to react to an insult? And why it matters who it comes from, and in what form and what context." At some point in time, we've all been the target of insulting comments. If the insult seems real and not some misguided attempt at a joke, the situation can be hurtful and confusing. The insults don't always come in the form that allows you to immediately know whether it's happened. But, you're confused. There is... hang on. There is, of course, a whole question, a whole field of like, what do you do at this point? Why are we, why are we being insulted? According to Nicholas Carroll, a basically clinic, basically a researcher in ethnographic studies, writing for a book called Fighting Slander, Nicholas Carroll observed that people get 5 stages after being defamed. Defamation is something I will get to a bit later, but it's very, very closely tied to the concept of the insult, of being sworn at. First stage, according to Nicholas Carroll, is disbelief, amazement, and then bewilderment. These three phases happen so rapidly, according to Nicholas Carroll on nicholascarroll.com. They happen so rapidly that they're not worth separating into separate stages. First, the victim literally doubts that they heard or correctly read, and they will reread the words or ask the person to repeat what they just said, if only by way of saying what. That's immediately followed by wide-eyed amazement and then confusion. Notice, by the way, the reading part. This is something I will get to a bit later, but yes, insults are not just stuck in the realm of talking. Anyway, the second stage is curiosity. As the accusation sinks in, their mind begins to function and they want to know where the accusation originated. This is often where the victim enters a Kafkaesque world, as the person who told them says, "I can't tell you that." The third stage of defamation is usually some kind of a dismissal, as in no one will believe that. This is a stage that doesn't last that long. In fact, it only lasts until the victim hears the rumors for the second time. At this point, one of the dumb or feel good pieces of nonsense we are taught in childhood, about sticks and stones, which I will get to later, quickly disintegrates. Finally, the fourth stage is, well, the reaction. It has sunk in that the defamation really can be hurtful, and depending on their frame of mind and the severity of the defamation, victims of defamation will either hang on to their ability to reason, or they will succumb to feelings of anxiety and persecution. And in fact, feelings of anxiety and persecution are very, very common reactions to being insulted. Defamation, according to the Huffington Post, who actually quoted Nicholas Carroll in their article, he reckoned that only about 5% of people who are victims of defamation, of being insulted, in other words, deal with it optimistically. Or, according to the Huffington Post, become obsessed, and far too many become their own destroyers by protesting their innocence to everyone they meet, including people who have never even heard about it anyway. Dealing with defamation rationally, according to the Huffington Post, is the exception, because defamation is rarely rational. It is perpetuated not only by clinical psychopaths and semi-functional sociopaths, but apparently normal people who have too much time on their hands. Best summed up by philosopher Eric Hoffer saying, quote, "People mind other people's affairs when their own affairs are not worth minding." And in fact, this is true on a biological level. Nicholas Carroll is not the only person to be saying that, in fact, we aren't really all that good at dealing with being insulted. Now, you might be thinking, like, oh, I'm like a really stoic person, and like, when somebody says something mean about me, I just kind of brush it aside and don't care. But do you? Do you not care when someone very seriously and especially publicly insults you? In fact, on a biological level, and unknowingly, I couldn't quite find the source. I read it in a book about a year ago, and I know what book it was. I don't have it with me. It was John Ronson's thing, Saved in Public and Shamed. But it is when you're insulted, it's basically like in your mind the exact same as when you are being, if you will, physically attacked. It's stressful. It's suddenly on high alert. You're worried, sad, scared. This is in many ways why the little expression there that Nicholas Carroll dismissed so quickly, the expression of "sticks and stones may break your bones, but words will never hurt me," is actually completely untrue. Words actually do hurt people, even on a physical level. Now, this is something that's crazy for me. Like I was looking into it and just realized it, and I'd already known about it, but like realizing the extent of insults and swear words carry huge power in the right circumstance. Really did strike me. As I mentioned, being defamed, which is, I will caveat, is slightly different from being insulted. It's a legal difference, I will say, but there is a slight difference in the definition there. But being defamed really does hurt you, not just on the biological level, might I add, But being insulted actually really also hurts on a social level. After all, remember what I was talking about earlier? The original sort of origin of the insult is an attempt at using like a verbal aggression to avoid a physical confrontation over who is in the top of the hierarchy, who is in what place on the hierarchy. Instead, it's all about, oh yeah, no, I have the best. It's almost like I have the best use of the words that will hurt you if you don't back off and don't recognize that I'm in fact the top dog. But they do hurt. Like they are truly barbs sometimes when it comes to insults. Probably why sometimes they're so funny. But more on that coming later. We also the social damage can be very real. In my university course, I've been learning about the effects of sort of slander and libel a bit, and well, serious deal. For an insulted business, they can lose trade, maybe even so much as to go out of business altogether. For individuals, they become laughingstocks, mockery, become mocked, become ridiculed. Their social status is lowered, and as a result, well, they suffer. They suffer feelings of failure. They suffer feelings of not being adequate, of being under attack, of stress. It's serious business, this whole insulting and this whole defamation stuff. Maybe we should get the lawman involved. I'm so glad you asked. But I will tell you all about that after we get these other people involved. I'll catch you all again very, very soon.
Whoa, Relax Radio.
আপনি হয়তোবা জানেন না যে রেডিও অ্যাডভার্টাইজমেন্ট ইজ 4 times more powerful than any other media. রিল্যাক্স রেডিওতে যদি অ্যাডভার্টাইজ করতে চান তাহলে আমাদেরকে আজই যোগাযোগ করুন on 020-7474-9292 আমাদের সাথে অ্যাডভার্টাইজ করুন from £99 a month. Increase your business by advertising on Relax Radio.
It's time for a show on Relax Radio. It talks about me and you. It's time for a show on Relax Radio. It talks about me and you. So listen to us, 24 hours, and let the happiness come to you on Relax Radio. Tune in to Relax Radio.
It has been too long. No one has taken the initiative to know who you are and what you do. Well, Relax proudly presents Relax Media to unite and expose all media-related personalities under one umbrella. If you are an artist, or maybe you're looking for one, look no further. Log on to www.relaxmedia.com, RELAKS media.com. In return, you get a free webpage and exposure to wider fan appreciation and contacts. Also, optional personal manager. Don't delay.
Relax Radio.
Hi, welcome to the Wednesday Witterer with George Shaft, hosted by me, George Shaft. It's in the name. Join me as I deep dive into everything you could ever want to know about, well, anything you never thought to think about. Only on Relax Radio. Hey there, and welcome to the Wednesday Witterer with George Shaft. My name is George Shaft, and joining me in the studio today is the computer. Scary little cybernet, cybernet stuff, all kinds of Skynet and all. Well, I'm not going to go on over more of that. It's just got a little article I've got put up talking about, well, the law. You see, here's the thing, right? We've learned a lot about insults and swear words today in today's deep dive. 2 hours. It's crazy, really. Of just long, deep dive talking about, hey, here's everything you'll ever want to know about insults and swear words. And there's a lot to learn. Swear words and insults are older than humanity itself, with creatures that aren't humans resorting to them. We've learned that some gestures that are still with us today, like the middle finger, are as old as the ancient Greeks. And that even though some gestures can be as old as that, other words, like a couple of medieval swear words I used in the show, have fallen away and not become insults in the meantime. We've learned that swear words originally sort of came about with a social function to sort of put the person who's saying the words on a higher sort of level, on a hierarchy, than the person who is being insulted, at least in their minds anyway, as most of the time when people are using a swear word, in fact says more about their own perceived status in the hierarchy than it actually says about their actual place in that hierarchy. We also learned that it's serious business, both on the biological and the social level, as victims of defamation, which is not quite the same as insulting, but is very, very similar as a concept, can suffer really serious effects with stress, anxiety, wild disbelief, and ultimately social and economic penalties in their everyday life as a result. Sounds serious. And, well, it is. Why the law gets involved when it comes to insults. I have got on the computer up hse.gov. I've got a couple of sort of websites, in fact, up. They're all about, hey, here's the government's kind of like view on curse words. Because we already learned one aspect of the government's view on curse words. Ofcom, which is the regulator for television and for the radio, in fact has a list of words that you can't use on the television and the radio, as long as it's pre-watershed, which basically is the 9 o'clock. Basically, when the night comes around, you are allowed to say more stuff because no children are watching. But anyway, what is a defamation? And what are the sort of categories within that? Well, according to the HSE website, defamation is, quote, 1, you should be on guard against. No, it's saying you should be on guard against making statements which could be defamatory. A defamatory statement is one which injures the reputation of another person. It, quote, tends to lower him in the estimation of right-thinking members of society general. That's kind of a big deal. When somebody is defamed, as they would, or insulted, in other words, they're standing on the pecking order of people, the kind of the informal, person-to-person pecking order is damaged. No doubt about that. But it's split into two halves, in fact, when it comes to defamation. The first way you can go about this is called libel. Now, libel is when you publish the insult. It is included in the publication for these purposes. It is simply the communication of the defamatory matter to a third person. And is also, quote, in writing, print, or some other permanent form. This is why libel can include like television documentaries, if you follow like court cases and stuff, videos, radio shows. Typically, a media company will be will often be sued for libel, but yeah, there are loads of cases in just the history of Britain alone, and I'm mostly focusing on Britain because, it's the country in which I live in. But libel, serious business. I remember there was one case that I was studying about in my course, where I'm studying, by the way, a master's degree in journalism. But it's like, yeah, so in the 1950s, there was this lord who got, defamed into implying that he was taking drugs. And everyone kind of turned on him. So he reacted, went to the courts about this. Of course, if the person who'd been doing it was only doing it in the moment and just saying it, well, typically a slander is published, but it's made orally or in some other transient form. I correct myself. I believe that TV and radio would in fact be slander, not libel. I've kind of forgotten, which is going to make my teacher very, very upset. But the basics are still clear there for all to see. In the British government system, we actually legally do have mechanisms for dealing with being insulted, either by, we call it defamation, and we've learned that it's defined as something that tends to lower, him in the estimation of right-thinking members of society generally. We've learned that that it's subdivided into libel and slander, which are, basically, the different ways and the mediums by which the person has been defamed, by which they've been insulted, by which they've had potentially a swear word used against them. We've already learned, though, previously on the show, that such a person would have every right to respond for such a thing. The biological effects on the human mind of being insulted is clearly pretty negative, with a lot of stress, a lot of anxiety, and worry, disbelief on having had such a thing being done to them, with it on a neurological level being almost indistinguishable from being physically, attacked. However, there's more to that, though, isn't there? Now, you could, of course, if somebody insults you, take recourse via the law. You could take them to a civil court in Britain and sue them and go like, hey, you can't say that. It's not true. And, there's a whole thing about how they could defend themselves on that. But, I'm not so interested in the person using the insult at the moment. It's usually, after all, we've learned that it's usually more about, the person who is using the insult than it is about the person who's getting it. But as the person who's getting it, how do you react? How do you respond to being insulted? Well, I've got a whole bunch of things here, but I'm going to choose Bustle for the one that I think was the most clear, the most simple one. Sticks and Stones, says Bustle.com, can break your bones, and unfortunately, as all the insult slingers in the world apparently know, words hurt too. But there are better and worse ways to respond to an insult. And since you're very likely to be insulted in your life at some point, it's time you give the matter some thought. According to Norwegian researchers who dug into the various types of insults and how people respond to them, they managed to sort of uncover a very complicated truth when it came to this aspect of insults. They found that there's basically just a handful of ways to really respond. The first one is to reinterpret what was said. A study showed that people are better at being able to cope with abstract, vague threats rather than specific ones. In the case of insults, this means that you can often reinterpret the insult in a way that requires a less direct of a response. For example, if someone says you're needy as a friend, your first instinct might just be to deny it. But if you think a little harder, maybe it's actually not. No, maybe it's actually a statement of, how communicative you are. No need to dispute it. And this is something I've seen used especially in politics. The one I remember where that kind of attitude came about was just prior to the Russian Revolution. The kind of sort of socialists and communists split into two camps. One were the Bolsheviks, or the majority. The other were the Mensheviks, who it actually translates as the minority. Originally, it was actually an insult, where the kind of the Bolshevik ones, under Lenin, were going, "Hey, you guys don't represent the people. You represent, the minority. You represent small numbers of people." And the Mensheviks kind of went, "Hey, sounds like a cool little word. Yeah, we are in fact the Mensheviks. We are in fact, these people." Though it is maybe a bit complicated by the fact that you could actually be taking option 2 on that one, which is to, quote, according to Bustle, self-deprecate in moderation. This tactic works best for people who already enjoy high social status. A study suggests that self-deprecation makes high-status people look even cooler. But then again, it also makes low-status people look even lamer. Watch out. Or ouch is what they say. But it's definitely still a legitimate strategy. If you're someone who is just confident in what you do, who you are, what you're up to, make sure that you, if you get insulted and you decide that you're just going to self-deprecate, but watch out. You might end up doing more damage than it's worth on your thing. The third reaction that you could go for, legitimately, according to Bustle, is to just straight up refuse to engage. All of those findings about self-deprecation show that insults and how we react to them are basically an intricate game to jockey for social standing. You can't really win once and for all in the game of social standing. It's something that goes on and on forever, and that's exhausting. If you become an insult pacifist and firmly refuse to engage in the status games of insults and comebacks, you can take out much of the sting from other people's attempts to draw you back in. Which is, I guess, fair enough. I know that I did that for a while, especially in school. It's like, if somebody was insulting me, it'd just be like, "Yeah, all right, who cares? I'm out anyway. I'm firmly established that, not that high in the pyramid. Who cares?" The fourth and final reaction, according to Bustle, is you can just don't take it personally. In my experience, says this journalist, this is way easier said than done, but it's at least possible not to take an insult personally. Try to remember that what other people say and do is way more a reflection on them than it is on you, and just let it kind of roll off. Now, that's kind of harder to do than you would think, because after all, we found that insulting is serious business. We've learned that people who are insulted can often get serious levels of stress, anxiety, and a neurochemistry that looks indistinguishable from that when that occurs with physical threats or attack. We've also learned that that's not therefore by accident either, since insults are a way of sort of establishing social status, and are basically the way for animals such as humans to not to kind of get involved in the social status pecking order, figure out the hierarchy without resorting to physical aggression, to physical blows. And as such, we've also figured out that the practice of insults and the use of swear words is older than humanity itself, and that some gestures are even older than are old enough to be used by the ancient Greeks before even Christ himself. We have also, of course, learned also that the insults can be very context dependent, with certain words that are insults defined as such by Ofcom, the regulator for television and radio in the UK, but with the caveat that, depends on the context and depends how the words are used. Of course, we also have learned that the law in the form of Ofcom and other means do get involved with official definitions and, very, very busy courts working on defamation and libel as people take the insulting words written and said about them and take them to court for damages about, to fix what's been done. But of course, just because there are just 4 ways in which you can react to being insulted, or at least more positively react to being insulted, there is the question of, well, I suppose there's 2 questions. One is, of course, what is the best way in which to react? And the other one is the question of what exactly makes an insult. Of course, the best reaction, according to psychology today, because they seem like a good thing, is that a put down is, well, in many ways, it's kind of difficult to figure out like what is the perfect way in which to respond. And it will depend, of course, on the context. It'll depend on what circumstances you're in. But what does make an insult? What's the thing that you can question, that you go, okay, this is an insult? Well, I'll talk about that in much greater depth after these other people have a chat. So I'll catch you all again very, very soon.
Whoa, Relax Radio.
Wednesday from 4 till 6 on the Wednesday Witterer, only on Relaks Radio. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Wednesday Witterer with George Shaft. My name is George Shaft, and today I am asking the question, what makes an insult? What is, in fact, what is, in fact, the thing that makes a word an insult? Well, there's a question. And it's a question that, of course, builds up, though, on by now a large list of things that we have learned today on a, as usual, very, very productive episode of the Wednesday Witterer. We have learned, for example, that the use of insults, the use of swear words, is ancient indeed, with it probably predating actual humans themselves. We've learned that some gestures, such as the use of the middle finger as an insult, is old enough to have been used by the ancient Greeks, and was definitively recorded as such as far back at least as the 10th century in a big dictionary that was compiled. We also have learned that that the swear words will depend on context, with some swear words, such as the medieval ones I quoted at the towards the beginning, having fallen out of fashion, where in stark contrast to the use of the middle finger. We've learned that that swear words and insults serve a social function, that their origins being all about basically establishing a social order, establishing a pecking order for all the people, to figure out like, oh, who's the better one, who's the worst one. And of course, being the one who's considered the worst one is not pleasant by any means at all, with increased levels of stress and anxiety and fear being displayed in the people who are victims of being insulted and being defamed. We've also learned that, of course, there are recourses in modern society to deal with being defamed, both in terms of how you react on a personal level, with 4 broad strategies, perfectly valid to adopt to deal with it depending on your circumstances, versus the fact that you can go to the law and sue the person in court to get all the damages that their insult has caused you, and get it all back. But of course, that still doesn't answer the question, what makes a swear word a swear word? After all, we've already established that the word cow is one of Ofcom's 47 words that you can't say on TV. But yet they say that word all the time. So what is going on there? And what is the power? Now, what is the sort of characteristic that makes someone, be insulted? Well, we've already got some clues. In the dictionary, it mentioned, of course, the fact that a swear word is something that is an affront, something that causes people to look at you, be more contemptuous. It's something that, according to the law, defamation is something that lowers people in the standing of all right-thinking members of society generally. So what kind of thing do we talk about then? What is the sort of thing that, kind of we perceive to be insulting? In what context? Well, I'm going to start, of course, with Ofcom itself again, since they are the regulator. They're the ones whose word, when it comes to at least the television, have the final say on it. And in their study, when this is the expanded list, if you remember, that included a lot of words that are not actually in the study, in their full thing, but they're still there and still worth considering. And I wouldn't like to be called any of these, into my face. They have the following sort of categories that to define what is a insult. Their categories were: 1, general. General was actually the one that had the word cow in it in their studies, which I thought was interesting. These ones typically were about the kind of person in general, really. It was just kind of like catch-all for everything, isn't it? Second question, the second category they had, and this is one that the first one that aligns with the research of Norwegian researchers Bennigsen and Gabriel, who, according to Psychology Today, used a replication design, or repeating the same study, involving a total of 500 students, Norwegian students, to find that insults fell into 7 categories, which we'll get to later. They found that Ofcom believes that race and ethnicity are a type of insult. Now, of course, the race and insult and ethnicity category included such remarkable words as, what, you think I'm actually going to go and say things that will get me like thrown off the air? No, it's like that. Some of them are pretty bad though, and they're still on the Ofcom list, which you can look up for yourself. The second category they had was body parts, talking about kind of, in your trousers kind of parts of the body, implying that these are not the best. Next was sexual sort of orientation, talking, especially when it was around like homosexuality, going like, if you called someone as such, many people would consider that an insult. Next was they had mental and physical conditions. We have a lot of words, in fact, and I'm surprised how short it is for for Ofcom. We do have a lot of words that are basically just like, this person has, kind of little something in their brain on the physical level. Just, kind of off. Not worth it. Then they had religious insults, hand gestures, which are both pretty self-explanatory. And then there was a separate category of sexual references, which is basically talking not about the orientation, but about the behavior. These are words that I'm sure your lovely, lovely imagination is filling in. And then last of all, they had old people. What on earth was that noise? I'm not sure. I don't like it. It's cursed. Anyway, and then last was older people. There's a couple of words that sort of specifically addresses them. But of course, while there are some very derogatory terms to be using on older people, your mind might be already thinking like, wait, those aren't none of those things are by themselves necessarily insulting to talk about. That is very true. It gets even more interesting and more weird, I find, when looking at psychology today and looking at the research of these Norwegian researchers, Mons Benningsen and Ute Gabriel, who found that insults fell into 7 categories. One was promiscuousness, basically, again, that matches up with Ofcom's thing, talking about, your behavior in the bedroom. The second one was objectification, which was talk about, the kind of anatomy, I will put it like that, of the individual, especially sort of between the trousers. We found that the third category was, again, homosexuality, implications that you go into the bedroom with members of the same gender as yourself. Fourth one was unethical, which is a bit of a divergence from Ofcom's thinking. Ofcom didn't have a specific category, if you remember, that was like, oh yeah, this person is unethical. But according to these Norwegian researchers, that's exactly what they, should be. Next was another one that Ofcom talked about, which was the mental questions. Just words that, these ones aren't in words implying that someone is stupid, which is actually not an Ofcom word. So I'm actually allowed to use that word on the radio. Implying that someone is a bit stupid, that they can't, they're not really good at like using their head. They found that the 6th category was unattractiveness, implying that someone, didn't look good, which is interesting, like the word ugly. And then last of all, this one actually took me by surprise and opened up some memories and led me to a bit of realization. that was the word. That was cowardliness. There are words that refer or imply that someone is a bit cowardly. But this is the part where I mentioned that these Norwegian researchers were doing this in 2013, whereas Ofcom, as you might have noticed, in 2019, did not have this category. And it kind of struck me then that, the way in which the things that society deems to be insulting, the things that society decides, oh yeah, this is what we're going to use as an insult, really does change and really does depend on the context. We already learned that some individual words, like those from medieval times, aren't considered insults anymore. But, well, when was the last time you actually heard, insults implying your cowardliness? Maybe it's just me. Maybe the fact that I am who I am in some way makes people look at me and go like, oh yeah, coward, no need to talk about that. I don't know, maybe it's just me, but I remember when I was growing up, like cartoons would especially often have would call sort of their people like, oh, scaredy cat, that's the typical one. And then realize like I've not actually heard the word scaredy cat in years. Is it still an insult? Is it something that we as a society as a whole have decided, it's like, you know what? People who are afraid, who are scaredy cats, we're not going to, doesn't matter. Who cares? It's not an insult anymore. It's interesting. It definitely is something that, makes me think. It makes me think sort of the fact that we really do sort of change our ideas of what is an insult very often. On some fronts. On other fronts, though, it doesn't change at all. For the first one, I'll have to mention, of course, the fact that, when I was saying like the middle finger has been an insult for thousands of years, right? And how in the 10th century there was this dictionary that talked about its definition. Well, the reason I keep bringing it up is because that dictionary from the 10th century actually gave a very, very specific kind of definition for it. The middle finger, according to people in the 10th century, looked like a phallus, like male anatomy, in the trousers, and that's why it was considered an insult. Which is curious. It really does make me think, like, why those things in particular are considered insulting. Oh, really? You talk about I've talked about how it's a social hierarchy. It's all about like, oh, I'm the better person. On the pecking order, I deserve like more stuff and all that sort of stuff. But why in particular is, sexual prowess and like implications of homosexuality the battlegrounds, if you will, by which people decide, or not even people, like apes basically were deciding like, yeah, no, this is what we're going to use to insult the other apes. It's curious. It leaves you pause for thought. Pause for thought while your mind recovers from all of the swear words and all of the insults that are being thrown around. Aggressive acts, as I've already established before, to great effect, that are harming people on a mental level, on a biological, neurological level. But in the meantime, I think the time is actually almost that we're going to wrap up. It's a bit of a shame. I had a whole segment on the use of swear words in popular culture, but not to worry. We can put on the other people to talk one last time. If you want to call the studio, you still have time. The number is 07852 473 and 473. And yeah, let's see what the other people have to say. Catch you all again very, very soon.
Whoa, relax radio.
আপনি হয়তোবা জানেন না যে রেডিও অ্যাডভার্টাইজমেন্ট is 4 times more powerful than any other media. Relax রেডিওতে যদি অ্যাডভার্টাইজ করতে চান তাহলে আমাদেরকে আজই যোগাযোগ করুন on 020-7474-9292 আমাদের সাথে অ্যাডভার্টাইজ করুন from 99 pounds a month. Increase your business by advertising on Relax Radio.
It's time for a show on Relax Radio. It talks about me and you. It's time for a show on Relax Radio. It talks about me and you. So listen to us, 24 hours, and let the happiness come to you on Relax Radio. Tune in to Relax Radio.
It has been too long. No one has taken the initiative to know who you are and what you do. Well, Relax proudly presents Relax Media to unite and expose all media-related personalities under one umbrella. If you are an artist or maybe you're looking for one, look no further. Log on to www.relaxmedia.com, RELAKS media.com. In return, you get a free webpage and exposure to wider fan appreciation and contacts. Also, optional personal manager. Don't delay.
Relax Radio.
Yibba yabba, witter, jibba jabba. Oh, don't mind me. I'm just wittering away as I usually do on the Wednesday Witterer every Wednesday between 4 and 6 p.m. Join me if you're into that sort of thing for whatever reason, then you've come to the right place as you're listening right now to the Wednesday Witterer with George Shaft, hosted by George Shaft. And, well, I'm not going to keep you waiting anymore. Oh, let's bring you on back to the show. See you around. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Wednesday Witterer. My name is George Shaft, and joining me in the studio today is, of course, unfortunately, not as much time as I would have liked. I will have to confess that at some point during the show, the system kind of just broke right in front of my eyes. So I've actually kind of lost the sense of how much time I have left now for the show. So I'm just going to play it safe and just kind of wrap up around now. It's a shame. I was going to do a whole segment on like popular culture and also on some kind of final thoughts. But ultimately, we can wrap up pretty well and bring up those final thoughts and discuss like what I think about insults. What do I think about, swear words? We've learned quite a bit, haven't we, over the past 2 hours or so? Bit less, probably a bit less than 2 hours at this point, but we've learned quite a bit, haven't we? We've learned that swear words and insults are older than people themselves, with some gestures being dated back as far back as the ancient Greeks, with the middle finger being in continuous use since then. And it was defined as a sexual implication. Sexual implication, in fact, was one of the main things in 2 different studies on what constitutes an insult, as Norwegian researchers and Ofcom found when they were splitting up the different kind of characteristics, the different kinds of words that are used to defame and to verbally hurt people. And hurt they do. We learned that since the social function of insults is establishing a hierarchy, establishing a pecking order between members of the same species, that being on the receiving end of an insult is neurologically exactly the same as being at the receiving end of a physical attack. It is something stressful. It's something that, harms people, in their sort of mental self-image and on their mental level. We learned that that that's kind of backed up also by the social outcome of being insulted or having people believe the insult. That's why, naturally, the law got involved with implicate with a huge sort of system of going, hey, this is how you defame. No, this is defaming someone. No, we're defining it as something that will make all right-thinking members of society, think generally less of you. But then also provide splitting it up into slander and libel as two separate categories by which you can legally deal with being insulted. Of course, legally is not the only way, too. We learned that there are 4 broad responses that you can take as an individual when you are being insulted in the moment, ranging from just accepting it, if you will, self-deprecation, to ignoring it, going like, yeah, whatever. And of course, that's not even going into the whole world of comebacks or physical assault and fighting back. Of course, fighting back is the reason why we adopted insults in the first place, as we want to avoid physical aggression in that pursuit of the goal of establishing, the hierarchy. Now, if I had more time, I would be talking a bit more about popular culture and its use in comedy and in movies. But I'm going to play it safe, and I'm going to just leave on 2 last things that I want to sort of talk about. One of them is how not every person who's saying a swear word necessarily is. Tourette's syndrome, according to the metro.co.uk, in their article, Why Do People with Tourette's Syndrome Swear? The condition is actually called coprolalia. They say, quote, the most widely known syndrome of Tourette's syndrome is the verbal tics that result in people blurting out swear words. However, this is actually quite rare among sufferers. Involuntary utterance of swear words or other inappropriate remarks is actually only experienced by about 10% of Tourette's syndrome sufferers. However, it is definitely a possible symptom of the syndrome with its own name, which is coprolalia. That's quite a mouthful, isn't it? Coprolalia. According to the Metro, the cause of Tourette syndrome and coprolalia is unknown, but it's put down for now to neurological abnormalities. This is something I do want to mention. This is something I do want to sort of clarify before doing this big old wrap up on the sort of thing. The fact is that not everybody who's using a swear word at you or in the public necessarily means it. Sometimes it is actually a neurological syndrome recognized by psychologists as like, yeah, this is a thing that some people get where they just involuntarily blurt out swear words at random basis. I was actually during the lockdown playing quite a few video games on using a Discord server, and one of the regulars for a while on there was actually a person with Tourette's syndrome with coprolalia, and I have to say it was a bit of an eye-opening sort of moment where you're playing the game and suddenly in the chat someone's just like says a swear word, just insults. At first it was kind of jarring, but then you just kind of learn to live and let live, to react with not very much. That was in fact, in a way, one of the ways in which every source I looked at said that you can respond to swear words, and it's a pretty healthy response, to be honest. So I actually think that Psychology Today, in their article about why do we use insults, was being really alarmist when it talked about the fact that, as a whole, in modern society, we've actually been getting more and more tolerant of swear words. It talked about, and Ofcom noticed this too, by the way, in their thing, that there are certain words that would have been unthinkable to say on television just as far back as like the 1970s. But saying them today, who cares? Now, I would say them, but, they are still swear words, and I would still get into trouble for saying them, so I won't. But what I will say is, if I did say them, the social consequences of doing so will be lessened. And I don't think that's a bad thing. I think that there is actually some value in letting people just, in moderation, say what they want, even if it includes profanity, even if it does include swear words. I think that, I've been kind of mellowing, if you will, a bit, maybe a bit compromisey when it comes to, in the United States, the debate about, the Second Amendment, right? I've kind of had the thought that it's like, yeah, people in society do need, kind of, if you will, tools to fight, because sometimes that happens. And, attempts to self-censor away. Oh, look at this word. It's really insulting. Let's censor it. Nobody should hear it. No, like with Ofcom. It kind of strikes me a bit of a kind of like, yeah, but sometimes there really is a person out there who is such a so-and-so that you're going to have to say that swear word and not like replace it with this such a silly little euphemism, a replacement for it. I think that there is definitely a place for just lashing out with your words. And I think that a lot of the kind of moral busybodies who, this is especially something true of the sort of television, who kind of patrol the airwaves looking for someone to slip out the odd, F-bomb or the odd C-bomb and then go, oh no, someone's going to know about this. Someone's got to hear the scandal of what's happened. And I think that when it's just used in general, and it's not just like an actual defamatory insult to a specific person, that, as the individual swear words of days old has shown us, these words lose their power. And at that point, really, really, who cares? But what do you think? If you want to let me know what you think, absolutely message on the Facebook live stream of this show. You are listening to the Wednesday Witterer with George Shaft on Relaks Radio. I think this has been a really interesting episode. I've done basically a 2-hour deep dive on one subject, which I am entirely not used to. It's definitely been a load more than I'm used to. But, let me know what you think. If you like it, give the like and say nice things. If you don't, hey, I will recommend you go and say nasty things in the comments. After all, I've already established that I don't care about the swear words. I don't care about the insults, even though there are like actual neurological damage to being insulted. So go for it. Why not? My name has been George Shaft. You have been listening to the Wednesday Witterer with George Shaft, and I hope you have a great day. See ya!